lighthouse keeper's quiet night. The sea was gentle tonight. Waves rolled in with a slow rhythm, tapping the worn rocks at the base of the lighthouse like an old, familiar song. The sky was painted in shades of grey and lavender, the kind of dusk that wraps the world in softness. From the tower window, warm golden light spilled out into the evening mist, stretching toward the ocean and shimmering on the fog. The keeper leaned back, letting his thoughts drift like sea foam. There was no need for memory or future in this place. Just the warmth of the fire, the whisper of rain, and the steady turning of the light above, endless, dependable, and calm. Inside, the lighthouse keeper moved through the same quiet rituals he'd performed for years. He lit the lantern, checked the oil, and listened to the steady pulse of the rotating beam. Outside, gulls had long since gone quiet, and the village below was still. Only the wind and the waves kept him company. No soft, constant sounds that had become like a lullaby over time. He made a pot of tea and carried it to his small chair beside the fire. The walls were lined with books, some unopened for decades, others worn and folded from being read over and over. He opened a volume of old sea tales, not to read, but just to feel the texture of the paper. The rain tapped softly on the windows now, barely a whisper. A walk through the sleepy forest. A gentle forest path unfolded beneath your feet, its soil soft and cool beneath a canopy of swaying trees. The air was laced with the scent of pine and earth, and each breath felt slower than the last. A breeze passed through the tall branches overhead, whispering like distant voices, familiar but impossible to understand. Birdsong faded into silence as twilight deepened. Along the trail, wildflowers nodded gently in the breeze. The world felt paused, as though the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for night to fall completely. You walked at your own pace, guided only by the soft curve of the trail and the growing stillness around you. A stream appeared, its water flowing lazily over smooth stones. You sat beside it for a while, listening. There was something comforting in the endless flow, like time melting away. Fireflies began to rise from the underbrush, their tiny lights blinking in slow, patient rhythms. Further ahead, the path led into a clearing bathed in moonlight. You lay down on a bed of moss, the earth cool and inviting. Above, stars began to bloom between the branches. You closed your eyes, safe in the quiet forest that never asked questions, never hurried, only existed, softly and forever. Segment 3, the train that only runs at night. The train arrived without a sound, no horn, no screech of brakes, just the low hum of magic and motion. Its windows glowed with a faint blue light, and the platform seemed to exist only for this one moment. You stepped aboard, and the doors slid closed behind you with a sigh. Inside, everything was quiet. Velvet seats, warm lights, and a faint scent of lavender in the air. The train rolled forward through a world of night stars floating just outside the window, rivers of moonlight running beside the tracks. No conductor, no passengers, just you wrapped in the steady rhythm of movement. As the train passed through dreamlike landscapes, you saw things that felt like memories, or maybe they were stories. A field of glowing flowers, a village made of glass, a mountain whose peak touched the stars. Each scene passed quietly, never asking for your attention, only offering a sense of wonder before fading gently away. Eventually, the train slowed, but there was no destination, no need to get off. You reclined in your seat, letting the low hum of the engine and the soft flicker of lights rock you into a deeper kind of rest. The train would ride the edge of sleep until morning, and you were welcome to stay as long as you liked. The Antique Bookshop at midnight. The door creaked as you stepped inside. The world outside faded into silence, and the only sound was the distant tick of a grandfather clock deep within the shop. The air smelled of old paper, candle wax, and time-rich, and gentle and still. Shelves lined every wall, overflowing with books of every shape and color. Some had titles in languages you didn't know. Others had no titles at all, just leather covers that looked as if they'd been bound by hand 100 years ago. The owner was nowhere to be seen, but it didn't matter. This shop felt more like a dream than a store. You ran your fingers along the spines until one seemed to pull at your attention. It opened easily, and as you began to read, the world of the shop slowly melted away. You were now inside the Storia garden in moonlight, a palace of glass, a cabin in the snow. Each scene appeared softly, then drifted away like petals in wind. When you closed the book, you were back in the shop. A small candle burned on the counter, and beside it sat a note. "Take your time. The story will wait." You smiled, returned the book to its place, and sat for a while in the velvet reading chair, letting the quiet turn the pages of your mind. Evening in the tea garden. The tea garden sat on the edge of a hill, overlooking a sleepy village below. Lanterns swayed gently in the trees, casting pools of warm light onto the stone path. A kettle whistled softly in the distance, and the sound of distant chimes drifted in on the breeze. You took your seat on a cushion beneath a flowering tree, where a small table had already been prepared. A ceramic cup, still steaming, you took a sip. The tea was floral and comforting, like the feeling of a warm hand in yours. A bird called once, then was silent. The world was gently turning inward. Around you, the trees rustled with evening wind. You could hear footsteps far away, though no one ever arrived. The sky dimmed by degrees, slowly transforming into a deep blue curtain of stars. You watched the night open itself, wide and soft. After the tea, you closed your eyes. The scent of blossoms, the warmth in your chest, the sound of a garden preparing for sleep. You lay back on the cushion, the night air folding round you like a blanket. Nothing left to do, nowhere to be, just this quiet and enough. The clockmaker's evening. In a quiet village nestled between gentle hills and silver streams, there lived an old clockmaker named Eli. He had worked in the same cozy shop for over 60 years. The wooden walls smelled of cedar and thyme. Shelves lined with ticking clocks filled the room, each one with its own voice, soft and patient, like a lullaby that never ended. Eli didn't rush. He never had. He woke each morning with the sun, took his tea slowly, and shuffled into his shop. Wearing thick wool socks, he'd wind the clocks one by one, careful and steady, like brushing the petals of a sleeping flower. The villagers often said there was something different about his clocks. They didn't just tell time, they held it gently, like a story whispered through gears and springs. Children said the clocks dreamed when no one watched, and maybe they did. Eli's favorite clock stood tall in the corner, a grandfather clock with a soft chime like a distant bell over water. It had no numbers, only faint stars painted where they would be. At night, when the moonlight spilled in through the window, the stars on the clock would shimmer just enough to be noticed, like fireflies too shy to dance. He had built that clock many years ago on a quiet evening much like this one. It was a cool autumn night, the kind where the sky turns a deep velvet blue, and the leaves barely move. He had lit a single lantern and worked in silence, letting the soft tick-tick-tick of nearby clocks keep him company. By midnight it was finished, and for the first time in a long time he had fallen asleep in his chair, the clock's slow rhythm easing him into dreams. Now, every evening after his supper of bread, cheese, and apples, Eli would return to his chair beside the old clock. Eli's favorite clock stood tall in the corner. The village would quiet, the wind would hush, the world outside would slow down. And as he sat there, sometimes reading, sometimes simply watching the sky, darkened, he would listen. To the clocks, to the soft creak of the floorboards, to the faint hoot of an owl far away. It was a kind of music that didn't need notes. Some nights he would fall asleep in that chair, a small wool blanket draped over his knees. And as he slept, the clocks would keep ticking, each one a gentle drumbeat counting down to morning. No rush, no worry. If you were to walk past the shop late at night, you might see a faint light in the window and hear the softest chime, and if you stopped for just a moment, if you listened, you might find yourself slowing down, your breath softening, your thoughts quieting. And if you stood there long enough, letting the night settle over you like a warm quilt, you might begin to feel it too. Time not pushing forward, but pausing, letting you rest, because in that little shop where time was cradled with care, everything moved a little more slowly, and that's all right. There's no need to rush, just breathe and sleep. The cloud shepherd, high above the world, where the sky turns pale blue and whispers with wind, lived a cloud shepherd named Lyra. Her job was simple: guide the clouds across the sky each day, then gently tuck them in at night. She lived in a small cottage balanced on a floating island of soft grass and wildflowers, tethered to nothing but the breeze. Each morning Lyra rang a tiny silver bell, and the clouds small and sleepy would gather round her, yawning quietly. She would pat their misty heads, hum a slow tune, and lead them with a long-handled crook made of starlight and willow. The clouds loved her song. It sounded like still lakes and quiet mornings. They drifted together across mountain tops, past sleepy cities and whispering forests. Lyra guided them gently, making sure rain fell only where it was needed, over thirsty fields, dry rivers, and gardens that missed the touch of water. When the sun began to dip low, turning gold and then pink, she led the clouds back home. One by one, they settled on the hilltops of her island, curling up like cats in a warm room. Lyra would cover each one with a soft breeze and whisper a dream into its fluff. Some clouds dreamed of sailing over oceans, some of playing tag with the wind, and others just dreamed of napping forever. Lyra knew their dreams because she listened. She always listened. That's why they loved her. After the last cloud had stilled, Lyra sat in her rocking chair, the sky now deep blue above. Stars began to blink open, slow and kind. She watched them as she sipped her evening tea, chamomile and honey, steeped just long enough to turn the air sweet. Far below, the world was quiet. Villages tucked in under warm roofs. Trees stood still. The moon climbed slowly, never in a rush, and Lyra rocked gently, her breath rising like smoke, her thoughts soft as snow. The wind hummed low, wrapping around the island like a lullaby. Lyra's eyelids grew heavy. The clouds, already dreaming, seemed to sigh in their sleep. Even the stars blinked slower, as if they too were growing tired. Lyra stood, stretched, and walked to her bed made of down and moss. She looked once more at the sky, now calm and complete. "Sleep well," she whispered, to the clouds, to the wind, to the stars, then to herself. She lay down, the silence holding her like a blanket. The last sound was the soft tick of her old wooden clock, counting the seconds like heartbeats, steady and sure, and above her the clouds dreamed on, slowly drifting, slowly resting guarded by the quiet hand of the cloud shepherd, who had fallen into her own dream high above the world. The Library of Leaves. Deep in the middle of an old, gentle forest was a hidden library, not of bricks or stone, but of trees. The Library of Leaves, they called it. Its walls were trunks, its roof was made of branches, and its books were grown, not printed. Each leaf on every tree held a different story, written in fine silver threads, only visible in moonlight. No one knew who planted the library. It had simply always been there, growing slowly, patiently. The trees whispered softly to one another when the wind passed through, retelling tales to keep them fresh. No story was ever lost, not in this place. The librarian was a quiet man named Corin. He lived in a small wooden hut near the edge of the library. His job wasn't to organize the stories, no. The trees did that themselves. His job was to listen. Every evening, after a cup of warm milk and honey, Corin would walk among the trees, listening to what they chose to share. He'd bring a lantern with a soft blue glow, never too bright, just enough to see the path. The trees didn't like harsh light, and neither did Corin. He walked slowly, letting the wind guide him. Some nights he heard tales of lost cities, other nights lullabies sung by rivers long gone. When he reached a tree with something to say, he would place a hand on the bark. The story would hum gently up through his fingers. He didn't write them down. He didn't need to. He remembered them all not with his mind, but with his heart. On nights when rain whispered through the canopy, the stories turned softer. Raindrops tapped the leaves like fingers on a piano. The library would hum together, 1,000 voices humming one slow, peaceful song. Corin would return to his hut just before midnight. He would light a small fire, place a log on the flames, and sit in his rocking chair. The stories would still echo gently in his chest, like the last glow of embers in the hearth. Outside, the trees swayed slowly. Leaves rustled like pages being turned. Owls blinked from the branches. The forest breathed deeply. Never rushed, never hurried. Corin would sip the last of his tea, stretch, and lie down on his bed of woven moss and wool. He'd listen to the soft rustle outside, a bedtime story carried on wind and root and bark. The Library of Leaves never slept, not really. It simply quieted, slowed, and dreamed its stories in silence. And Corin, its only listener, would drift off with them peacefully, gently, like a leaf floating down a lazy stream. And so the forest held him, and the stories held the forest, and the night held them all, until morning came as softly as the turning of a page. The moon sweeper, far above the clouds, just past where birds stopped flying, lived a woman named Sira, who swept the moon. Her little home sat on the edge of a wide, silver plane the moon's surface, quiet and still. Each night, as the earth turned and stars blinked awake, Sarah picked up her soft bristled broom and began her work. She swept gently, never rushing. The dust on the moon was light as breath, and it shimmered when it moved. With each stroke, stardust floated up and drifted into the sky, joining the Milky Way like spilled sugar in the dark. She didn't mind the silence. It was a kind, soft silence, the kind that wraps around you like a blanket. Sarah followed the same path every night, circling slowly around the moon's edge. Her only company was a small cat made of moonlight named Kiri, who padded beside her, quiet as snowfall. Sometimes Kiri would chase drifting dust, but never far. She always came back and curled around Sira's boots when she rested. When Sira finished sweeping, the moon would glow a little brighter. She'd sit on the edge and dangle her feet, watching the earth far below. Lights twinkled on countenance. Oceans shimmered like glass. She imagined people in warm beds, breathing softly in their sleep, unaware of her quiet work above. Then she'd open a small tin and take a bite of honey bread, sipping warm tea from a silver cup. Kiri would purr beside her, watching stars drift lazily by. Time didn't move fast on the moon. It stretched and softened like dough, giving everything room to rest. On windy solar nights, Sarah would hum. Her voice was low and even a tune without words. It was a song made for no one and everyone, carried by stardust to wherever it was needed most. Some say that's why people dream of the stars, because of her song. When it was time to sleep, Sarah would light a lantern made of frozen light and float back to her home. The bed was tucked beneath a window where the stars never blinked out. Kiri curled at her feet. The broom rested by the door. Outside, the moon stayed still and shining, swept clean and calm. The stars leaned in close, listening to her last sigh as she drifted into sleep. And somewhere far below, someone stirred in their sleep and smiled, not knowing why. Because sometimes peace doesn't come from silence alone. Sometimes it comes from knowing someone, somewhere, is keeping the night gentle for you. And so the moonsweeper slept, and the night held its breath, and the universe turned just a little more softly. The train to nowhere in particular. Every evening, just after twilight, a train rolled quietly out of a hidden station at the edge of the world. Its name wasn't printed on any map. Most people had never seen it, but those who did called it the train to nowhere in particular. It had no schedule, no destination, and no rush. Only soft seats, warm lights, and endless track beneath the stars. The train moved slowly. It never whistled, never clanged. Just a low hum, like a lullaby hummed behind a closed door. Its windows were always slightly fogged, and the curtains swayed gently with the motion, like someone breathing in their sleep. Inside, every seat had a soft wool blanket and a small pillow that smelled faintly of lavender. Passengers didn't speak much. Most sat quietly, reading, sipping tea, or simply gazing out the windows into the night. There was nothing urgent to do. That was the point. The conductor, an old man with kind eyes and silver gloves, moved down the aisle now and then, making sure everyone was comfortable. He didn't punch tickets. He only offered extra blankets or warm cocoa to those who looked especially tired. Outside, the train rolled through meadows, dusted with moonlight, over sleepy rivers, past forests that whispered with wind. Sometimes it would pass through towns where every window glowed soft yellow, but it never stopped, not unless someone needed it to. In one car, a boy curled up with his dog, both fast asleep. In another, a woman sketched clouds she had seen hours before. In the last car, a man stared out into the stars, not thinking of anything at all, just letting the stillness settle in. Sometimes the train went underground into tunnels lit by lanterns strung like fairy lights. Other times it rose high across bridges that stretched above clouds. No one ever asked where it was going. They trusted the train to take them somewhere they didn't know they needed. There was no hurry to arrive. The ride was the point. The slow swaying, the quiet rhythm, the stars keeping pace outside. Eventually, eyelids would droop, heads would rest against windows or pillows, and the train would carry them gently into dreams. By morning, the train would pull softly into a new place. Maybe a field of tall grass, maybe a lakeside where fog rolled in slow, or maybe it just stopped beneath a sky that hadn't been seen before. The passengers would step off, not quite sure where they were, but feeling rested, lighter somehow. By morning, the train would pull softly into a new place. Maybe a field of tall grass, maybe a lakeside where fog rolled in slow, or maybe it just stopped beneath a sky that hadn't been seen before. The passengers would step off, not quite sure where they were, but feeling rested, lighter somehow. And then the train would wait, quiet, patient, until the next traveler climbed aboard, and the journey began, again nowhere in particular, and exactly where they needed to go. Nilo the Night Cat. In a small, quiet town where the street lights flickered softly and windows glowed golden after sunset, there lived a cat named Nilo. He wasn't anyone's pet, no collar, no home, but he belonged to everyone because Nilo was the night cat, and every evening, just after the last door clicked shut, he began his rounds. Nilo walked rooftops like they were made for him. His paws made no sound. His eyes shimmered like polished amber, always calm, always watching. He knew which windows had children afraid of the dark, and which ones held restless dreamers trying to fall asleep. He'd sit on their sills and stare quietly inside, never tapping, never meowing, just being there, and that was enough. For some reason no one understood, when Nilo sat nearby, people's thoughts slowed down, worries melted, breathing softened, sleep came easier. He had his favorite spots, the bakery roof, still warm from the ovens, the old oak tree near the school, perfect for stretching, and the clock tower where he'd sit at midnight and watch the stars move slow, steady, like a lullaby made of light. Sometimes Nilo visited those who had trouble sleeping. He'd slip in through cracked windows, hop silently onto beds, and curl at the foot. His purring was almost too soft to hear, but you felt it like a soft hand on your back, telling you you're safe now. He never stayed long, just until your breathing matched his. Then he'd vanish back into the night, onto the roof, into the dark that wasn't scary when he was in it. No one ever caught Nilo. He was always just gone by morning. Sometimes a faint paw print was left on a window ledge, or a single black whisker on a pillow. People stopped wondering how he got in. They just hoped he'd return. One little girl began leaving a saucer of warm milk on her balcony each night. Not because he needed it Nilo didn't eat, but she said it felt nice to offer something back. Every morning the saucer was empty, though no one ever saw him drink. And so the town slept a little easier night after night, not because the world changed, but because something kind was watching from the rooftops. Quiet, steady, always nearby, Nilo still walks the town when the stars come out, still purrs at windows, still curls at the foot of beds, and if tonight you feel a little less alone, if sleep comes a little easier, maybe just maybe the night cat is with you too. The lighthouse that waited. At the edge of a sleepy sea, where waves lapped like soft breathing and seagulls sang only in the morning, stood an old lighthouse. It hadn't lit its lamp in many years, not because it was broken, but because no ships passed by any more. Still, the lighthouse waited, quiet, steady, watching the ocean like a parent watching a child sleep. The keeper of the lighthouse was a woman named Malin. She had silver-streaked hair, a slow smile, and a habit of humming lullabies to the sea. She kept the lighthouse clean and warm, though it didn't need much. Salt air didn't bother it, and the wind had grown soft over time. Each evening, just before sunset, Malin would climb the spiral stairs to the lantern room. She didn't light the lamp anymore, but she liked the view. The sky turned from gold to pink to lavender, and the sea reflected it all like a mirror held to the heavens. She'd bring a thermos of chamomile tea, a small biscuit, and sit in her chair by the great round window. From there she watched the tide roll in and out, and sometimes she imagined the waves breathing to inhale, exhale, over and over, slower than any clock. At night, the lighthouse made its own music. Creaking beams, gentle wind, the hush-hush of water against stone. Malin would listen as she sat by the fire downstairs, knitting something that didn't need finishing. She didn't rush anything, not here. Sometimes fog would roll in, thick as wool, and Malin would light the lamp not because anyone was watching, but because she liked the way the beam cut through the mist, slow and sure, sweeping across nothing but sea and memory. She believed that even if no ships came any more, the light still mattered. Maybe the moon saw it, or the clouds, or maybe it comforted the ocean itself, knowing someone was awake and watching. When she went to bed, Malin left the door open just a crack. The sound of the sea drifted in, a lullaby older than any song. She would pull the quilt up to her chin, sigh once, and let the dark fold over her like a warm coat. The lighthouse stood through the night, unmoving. The wind curled gently around it. The stars above blinked slowly, not in a hurry to fade. And far below, the waves kept breathing in and out, like a world rocking itself to sleep. And if you listened very closely tonight, you might hear it tooth the hush-hush rhythm of sea against shore, and the quiet peace of a lighthouse that waits, even when no one is watching. The meadow that dreamed. There was a meadow hidden far behind the hills that only a few ever found. It wasn't marked on maps, no roads led to it. You just sort of stumbled into it one day maybe, after a long walk, or when you needed a rest. The air there always smelled like warm grass and gentle rain, even when the sky was clear. The meadow never made a sound. No traffic, no buzzing, just wind passing softly through tall grass and sleepy bees hovering near wildflowers. It didn't matter the season. The meadow always stayed the same calm, quiet, almost like it was dreaming. Some said the meadow was alive, not just with plants and birds, but with thought, that it remembered every person who had ever rested there, that it whispered to the grass, let them sleep, let them breathe, and the grass listened. At the center of the meadow was a single tree, wide branches, thick roots, leaves that shimmered a soft green even under moonlight. People called it the dreaming tree. No one planted it. It had always been there, and if you sat beneath it, you'd feel your thoughts slowed down, like the tree was holding them gently in its limbs. One boy once came to the meadow after a restless week. He lay down under the dreaming tree and closed his eyes. No thoughts chased him, no noise followed. Just the breeze, the leaves, and the sound of his own breath matching the rhythm of the world. An old woman visited once every year. She said the meadow helped her remember the good things, like the feel of a loved one's hand, or the smell of bread baking, or the sound of rain on a tin roof. She never stayed long, just enough to smile and rest. At night, the stars seemed lower in the meadow, as if the sky leaned down to be closer. Owls never hooted too loud. Crickets sang soft, steady songs, and the moon always seemed a little warmer there. Some said the meadow dreamed with you, sinking its breath with yours until you drifted away. No one owned the meadow. No fences, no signs. It didn't need to be claimed. It existed for anyone who needed it, even just once, even by accident. And when you left, it didn't say goodbye. It just waited for the next tired soul who needed a place to rest. And if tonight your eyes are heavy and your heart feels full of noise, imagine that place. The grass folding around you, the wind like a quiet friend, the dreaming tree above. You don't need to think. You don't need to speak. Just lie down. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts fade like the last notes of a lullaby. The meadow will wait. It always does. The turtle who carried the stars. A long time ago, before clocks ticked and calendars counted, there lived a turtle named Ori, who carried the stars on his back. He was older than the oldest trees, but he never hurried. Ori moved slow because he was never lost. He always knew exactly where he was meant to be. Each night, after the sun dipped below the hills, Ori would begin his journey across the sky. The stars on his shell shimmered to life, glowing like tiny lanterns. One by one, they lit up until the night sky was full, because Ori had passed that way. No one ever saw him move. They only saw what he left behind. The sky full of stars, placed gently and carefully in patterns that made dreamers look up and wonder. That was Ori's quiet joy, to make the night gentle, calm, and a little brighter. Down on earth, some people felt uneasy when the sky was too dark. They worried, they watched. But those who knew about Ori never feared the night. They'd whisper, "He's on his way," and go to bed knowing the stars would come, just as they always did. Ori walked over mountains, above oceans, across clouds and moonlight. His shell never dimmed, and though he never spoke, his silence felt warm, like being wrapped in a story you didn't need to understand, only feel. He stopped sometimes the tops of quiet hills or over lakes that mirrored the sky. He liked those moments when sky and water reflected each other so perfectly it looked like he was walking across both. That's when he let the smallest stars drop gently from his shell, making wishes ripple on the surface below. Some stars fell to earth, tucked into dreams. Others stayed in the sky. Ori never chose where they landed. He just trusted they'd find where they were needed. That's what stars do. When the night was almost over and the horizon began to glow with early light, Ori would rest. He'd tuck his legs beneath him and settle into a soft pocket of sky. The stars would dim, satisfied. The world below would begin to stir. But Ori, he would sleep. His shell would cool, the last twinkle would fade, and all would be still, not empty resting, until the next night, when Ori would rise again, slow and sure, to carry the stars across the world once more. So if tonight you see a star blinking just above your window, know this: Ori has been there. He's passed by quietly, kindly, without needing thanks, and now it's your turn to sleep. The pillow boat. There's a boat that only sails at night. It's not made of wood or metal, but of fabric stitched from quilted linen and stuffed with the softest feathers. People call it the pillow boat. It has no engine, no sails, no sound. It floats on still water, guided only by moonlight and dreams. No one ever sees it arrive. One moment it isn't there. Then suddenly, just when you're too tired to ask how, it's waiting at the edge of a quiet lake, its small lantern glowing like a firefly's breath. The air smells faintly of chamomile and rain. The pillow boat doesn't ask for tickets. You just climb in when you're ready to let go of the day. Its cushions sigh when you sit. Its blankets tuck themselves around your legs. And once you lie back, the boat begins to drift slow, silent, safe. It floats past lily pads and reeds, through little tunnels of hanging vines. The stars above move with you, one by one, blinking slowly like they're getting sleepy too. Owls blink from branches. Frogs hum low, steady chords. The water barely ripples. You don't need to steer. The boat knows where to go. It follows the softest path, turning gently whenever dreams lean that way. It passes through quiet fog that curls like smoke into hidden coves where nothing makes a sound but the lapping of water. Sometimes it drifts under arches made of moonbeams. Sometimes it glides beside glowing fish that swim like lanterns. But no matter where it goes, it never hurries, and it never, ever tips. It carries you like a cradle. Eventually, your eyes start to close, your arms grow heavy, your breath becomes the rhythm of the lake itself, slow, even, deep. And just before you fall asleep completely, the boat nestles itself into a patch of tall reeds and rocks gently in place. The lantern dims, the stars grow quiet, the lake hushes its ripples, and the pillow boat, soft and steady, holds you like a story being told without words. You'll wake up in your bed, warm and still, not remembering when or how you left the boat, but you'll feel rested as if you traveled somewhere safe, somewhere made just for sleeping, because you did. And tonight, if your thoughts are too loud or your eyes won't close, don't worry. The pillow boat is waiting. It always is. The forest that forgot time. There was a forest so quiet, so old, that even the trees had forgotten how to count the years. They didn't mind. Time moved differently there. Birds didn't fly in a hurry. Leaves fell when they felt ready. The sun took its time rising, and the moon never rushed to leave. This was the forest that forgot time. At the heart of this forest lived a girl named Lynn. She wasn't lost, though most would say she should be. She had found the forest years ago while following a butterfly and had simply stayed. The forest made space for her, the way moss grows over stone, without a sound. Lynn's home was a small cabin built with driftwood and ivy, tucked beside a stream that always whispered but never roared. Her days were slow and gentle. She picked berries when she was hungry, napped when the breeze told her to, and read stories carved into the bark of ancient trees. Some trees, the older ones, could speak not in words, but in feelings and memories. When Lynn placed her hand against their trunks, she'd see flickers of old days, deer leaping in morning light, thunderstorms rolling in slow motion, a fox curling up under roots to sleep. Each evening, as the sky turned soft with dusk, Lynn would walk to the hill in the center of the forest. From there she could see everything, the silver stream winding through trees, fireflies blinking between branches, and the stars beginning to appear, one by one. She never needed a lantern. The forest glowed at night not brightly, just enough. Mushrooms gave off a faint blue shimmer, ferns lit with golden dust. Even the stones had a dim warmth, like they'd held onto sunlight and didn't want to let it go too quickly. The animals of the forest knew her, though few ever came too close. They didn't need to. There was no fear here, no chasing or fleeing, just stillness, a soft agreement between all things. We are here. That's enough. Sometimes Lynn would lie down on a bed of moss and look up at the sky. The stars above the forest didn't twinkle. They pulsed, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. She liked to think the forest was dreaming then, that everything, even the sky, was resting with her. And in that place, in that moment, there was no before or after, no clocks, no footsteps behind or ahead, just breath, just stillness, just the deep, endless comfort of being held by a world that asked for nothing in return. Lynn would drift off slowly, the earth beneath her like a cradle. The wind, warm and round, would wrap around her like a blanket, and the last sound she'd hear would be the rustling of trees, like an old lullaby hummed by something ancient and kind. In the forest that forgot time, sleep was not something to chase. It was something that arrived quietly, like a deer stepping through fog, and it always came, always in its own time. So if tonight feels heavy, if your thoughts won't settle, just close your eyes. Imagine that forest, the moss, the stars, the hush. You're already there. You always were. The valley where the wind sleeps, in a forgotten valley beyond the last bend of a dirt road and past the whispering meadows, there was a place where the wind came to rest. The locals called it Stillwater Hollow, though few lived close enough to hear the name spoken aloud. It was a wide, slow valley bordered by forested ridges and clothed in soft green grasses that moved only when touched by birds or deer. At the heart of the hollow was a small round lake, fed by streams so gentle they barely rippled the surface. The water was clear and deep, like a held breath. On still evenings, it reflected the sky so perfectly that birds flying overhead seemed to dive into another world. No motor sounds reached here, no hurry. In a cottage built of river stones and mossy timber, a woman named Mira had lived for many years. She was not young and not old, but quiet in the way people become when they listen more than they speak. She lived with a ginger cat named Fern, and spent her days walking the ridgelines, tending her garden, and reading books that smelled of paper and peace. Each morning she lit the stove with a single match, boiled water for tea, and stepped onto the porch to greet the valley. Sometimes there was mist rolling like spilled milk over the lake. Sometimes deer stood still among the reeds. Often it was just birdsong, layered and gentle. like the valley was slowly waking up with her. Myra's cottage had no clocks. She measured time by the sun's shadow on her stone path, the rhythm of tea leaves steeping, the scent of rain before it fell. When the wind moved in the trees above the ridge, it spoke softly, as if careful not to disturb the valley's dreaming. In the evenings, Myra would sit in her rocking chair, a blanket over her knees, fern curled by her feet. The sun would melt behind the hills, and the sky would bloom with stars. She never counted them. She just let them appear, one by one, like lanterns in some ancient procession. Sometimes Myra would hum no melody in particular, just a thread of sound that seemed to rise from the earth. On those nights, fireflies gathered around her porch in a quiet orbit, pulsing in time with the rhythm of her voice. The air would be cool, carrying the scent of pine and old wood. The lake would hold the sky like a lullaby. When storms came, they came slowly. Thunder was a far-off drum, rain a hush on the leaves. Myra would sit inside by the window, watching the silver strands fall and the trees bow gently. She liked the sound of rain. It felt like the valley breathing. Even Fern would lift his head to listen. There were no fences in Stillwater Hollow. Animals came and went. Birds nested in the beams of Myra's porch. Rabbits lived under her garden steps. A fox passed through once every few days, pausing as if to nod before slipping into the underbrush. Myra once told a traveler who had wandered into the valley and stayed for tea that the wind came here to sleep, that after running over cities and oceans and plains, it needed a place to be still. The traveler smiled and said he believed her. He stayed 3 days and left a small carved bird. On her windowsill, seasons turned, as they do. The valley changed slowly. Spring came with clouds of blossoms and new songs in the trees. Summer brought slow golden days and evenings that glowed like amber. Autumn painted the ridges in russet and gold. Winter laid down a quiet white blanket and stitched the sky with long, low stars. Through it all, Myra remained, reading, planting, listening, and the valley held her like a favorite memory. Tender, unhurried, unforgotten, and when the moon rose high and even the owls grew silent, Myra would whisper good night to the wind, and to the stars, and to the still lake that dreamed beneath them all. Sleep would come like mist across the water, gently, without sound, and the wind would sleep again. The forest of the long night. There is a forest, deep and old, hidden in the folds of far-off hills, where no roads reach and no signs point. It is not marked on maps, and no town lies near enough to claim it, but it is real and it is quiet. They call it the Forest of the Long Night. No one knows who named it. Maybe it named itself. The trees there are tall, some wider than a cart, with bark soft as velvet and moss growing in patterns like rivers. The forest floor is a patchwork of leaves and needles, and roots so old they have forgotten where they began. The long night is not dark or frightening. It is peaceful and slow and endlessly deep. The sun filters through the canopy like golden honey, thick and warm. The wind never hurries. It carries the scent of pine, earth, and old water, and it speaks only in hushed tones. In this forest lives an old caretaker named Ellis. His home is a low wooden cabin nestled in the roots of an ash tree that leans over a quiet stream. He has lived there for as long as anyone remembers, perhaps even longer. Some say the forest grew around him. Ellis rises with the morning birds and boils tea from mint and elderflower. His days are simple. He tends to the forest paths, lays stones across muddy crossings, and speaks to the animals as though they were neighbors. Sometimes they answer. His closest friend is a large blackbird named Cal. Cal has followed Ellis for decades, sometimes flying ahead, sometimes riding on Ellis's shoulder. They understand each other without needing words. The forest of the long night does not change quickly. Time here moves like mist, drifting rather than passing. The seasons arrive as suggestions. Spring is marked by the first frogs calling from hidden pools. Summer arrives when the ferns grow taller than Ellis. Autumn tastes like berries and smells like wood smoke. Winter is not cold, but still, each evening, Ellis walks the forest paths. He carries a lantern, though he doesn't always light it. The forest glows faintly on its own. Mushrooms flicker softly at the bases of trees. Tiny insects shine as they float, blinking like distant stars. He checks on the sleeping places, hollows where deer rest. Nests cradled in crooks of branches, burrows hidden beneath tree roots. He walks slowly, listening. Sometimes he hums a low tune. The forest always listens back. Long ago, someone built stone circles in hidden clearings. No one remembers why. Ellis keeps them tidy. In the center of the largest circle stands an old stone bench, worn smooth by rain and time. He often sits there at dusk, watching the shadows stretch like lazy cats. Visitors come sometimes. Lost hikers, wandering souls, the tired and the curious. Ellis never turns them away. He offers tea, a place to rest, and a story if they ask for one. Most don't leave right away. The forest has a way of wrapping itself around people's hearts, gently and without asking. They sleep deeply in the long night, deeper than they have in years. One traveler, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes, stayed for an entire season. She helped Ellis tend the paths and learned the birds' songs. One day she left a carved walking stick on his porch and walked into the woods without goodbye. He smiled. That's how it works here. In the heart of the forest is a grove where no wind stirs, and the trees seem to hum. It is said that time slows more deeply there, that dreams gather in the leaves. Ellis visits often but never stays long. Even the quietest places ask for space. Rain comes gently in the long night. It doesn't fall, it settles layer by layer, like silk laid across stone. The sound of rain here is like soft drumming on moss and wood, a rhythm that guides animals to burrow, birds to stillness, and people to sleep. Ellis once found an old violin in the hollow of a tree. No one knows how it got there. He cleaned it, strung it, and sometimes plays when the moon is full. The notes float out over the forest, and something in the trees seems to sigh. There is no danger in the long night, no sharp teeth, no storms, no fear. Even shadows move slowly here. Even silence feels warm. Sometimes, when Ellis dreams, he hears the forest speaking in languages he's never learned but always understood. It tells him stories of seed and sky, of rain remembered, of stars that wandered to low and stayed, and when he wakes, he writes them down not in books, but on stones, placing them in the paths for others to find. One day, perhaps far from now, Ellis may sleep and not wake, but not yet. The long night continues, and everything is at rest. The island of quiet hours. Far from the world of clocks and noise, there is an island, few maps, name, and no ships rush toward. It floats somewhere in the warm, lazy part of the sea, where the waves don't crash but sway, and the sky rarely hurries to change. This island is known only to those who need it. They do not plan to arrive. They simply drift, and when the time is right, the mists part, and there it is, a place built for slowness, for breathing, for rest. The island is not large, but it holds 100 paths. They meander gently, through meadows that bloom in silence, and woods that hum with old light. There are hills shaped like sleeping animals, ponds smooth as polished stone, and groves where trees grow in wide circles like they're holding a conversation that's lasted for centuries. In a little cove of this island, tucked between a slope of grass and the sea, there is a house made of driftwood and sand-colored stone. It belongs to a woman named Anna, though she would never say she owns it. It belongs to the quiet. She might tell you if she speaks at all. Anna lives here alone, though she is never lonely. Her days are filled with the soft work of tending the island, brushing leaves from garden paths, stacking driftwood in loose pyramids near the shore, talking with the birds and the trees and the breeze. Everything answers in its way. She wakes with the light not, because she must, but because the sun gently finds her. Her bed is near a window that faces east, and the dawn paints her walls in colors so soft they feel like warm breath. She stretches, she listens, she smiles. Breakfast is slow. A piece of fruit, a bowl of grains, a handful of berries. She eats while watching the sea, which always moves but never rushes. Dolphins pass sometimes, so do clouds, in long wandering shapes. Nothing repeats. Her days unfold like paper boats. She reads, she walks, she naps beneath trees that bend low like old friends. She tends to small fires at night and cooks simple meals over them roots, herbs, things the island gives. She writes in a journal, though not every day. The entries are short. The jasmine opened today, one reads. Another, the tide sang differently this morning. Lower, wiser. Sometimes she makes music with stones and shells, arranging them into patterns that the wind can play. She once made a chime from sea glass and pine twigs, and it sings with every change of air. There is no schedule, no need for one, only rhythm like a heart, like waves, like breath. Days fold into nights without friction. Others come to the island too, now and then. They arrive without knowing how. A sailor dreaming on his boat, a traveller who walked too long under the sun, a child chasing a kite over a dune. They do not speak much. They rest. Anna gives them tea, shows them where the softest moss is, points to the hill where the stars seem closest. They stay until the quiet works its way into their bones. Then they go, and Anna stays. She tends, she listens. Each part of the island has its own sound. The high meadow where wind sounds like slow flutes, the stone creek where water plinks over polished rocks like tiny bells, the black sand beach where waves hush and pull like breathing. One evening a fog drifted in, thicker than usual. Anna walked through it slowly, trusting her feet. The fog wrapped around trees and turned lantern light to milk. In the middle of a grove she found a deer sleeping. Unafraid, she sat nearby, closed her eyes, and matched its breathing. When night falls, it does so gently. Stars emerge slowly, like they're remembering their way home. Anna lights a single candle, drinks a warm cup of something sweet. and listens to the hush. She often dreams of the island long after it's asleep. In those dreams, she sees roots glowing underground like lines of thought. She hears voices in the sea foam, speaking not in words but in memories. And always the island holds her softly like sleep. On the western side of the island, where cliffs lean into the ocean and gulls drift without calling, there is a staircase carved from stone. No one remembers who carved it. The steps are smooth and weathered, leading down into a hidden grotto where the tide moves like a slow breath. Anna visits this place when the wind feels heavy. She brings a blanket and sits on the lowest step, feet in the water. Sometimes she sings their low, wordless notes that echo in the stone, and draw fish from their hiding places. Farther inland, past a thicket of tamarisk trees, lies a garden no one planted. Flowers bloom there in unplanned harmony, moon-colored lilies, bluebells that hum at dusk, and vines that carry the scent of distant rain. At the edge of this garden is a stone table covered in moss. Anna leaves gifts there sometimes. A feather, a polished shell, a poem folded in half. She never asks for anything. The table always accepts. One morning, a man arrived carrying nothing but a walking stick. He looked as though he'd been walking for 100 years. Anna welcomed him with a nod. He said little, only, "I followed the sound of rest. The island remains, and everything is at peace." Bruno's search for sleep. Bruno was a small, soft rabbit with fur the color of toasted oats and ears that flopped gently whenever he hopped. He lived near the edge of the great meadow, where grasses grew tall enough to tickle his nose, and the wind moved in whispers. One evening, as the sun dipped low and bathed everything in syrupy gold, Bruno yawned. He blinked slowly. It had been a long day of nibbling dandelions and watching clouds, and now he was ready to sleep. But tonight, something felt different. The hollow in his usual thistlebush bed felt poky. The moss was too lumpy. The breeze from the brook was just a bit too chilly. Bruno wriggled, turned, flopped left and then right. He mumbled to himself. Maybe there's a better place to sleep, just for tonight. And so, under the first peep of moonlight, Bruno set off on a sleepy little adventure. First, he tried the soft ferns under the old oak tree. They smelled nice, like damp earth and stories, and when he curled up, it was almost perfect. Almost, but then a family of beetles began rustling nearby, dragging bits of leaf and whispering in their tiny voices. It wasn't rude, just busy. Bruno tried to ignore them. He really did, but his ears twitched. His eyes blinked. He sighed, not quite. He whispered and padded on. Next, he found a patch of sun-warmed stones by the hollow log. The stones held onto the day's heat, and Bruno melted into them like a puddle of fur. But the sky was darker now, and the warmth soon faded. A cool breeze sighed through the log, and Bruno shivered just a little. Not enough to be cold, just enough to know he wasn't warm. Almost, he said, stretching his ears, but not quite. He wandered on, paws quiet in the grass. He tried the tall grass by the stream. He tried the blanket of moss beside the foxgloves. He even curled up in a hollow beneath a mushroom cap that looked like a tiny umbrella. Each place was nearly perfect. Each place was just a little bit not. Eventually, Bruno came to the willow circle. It was a ring of old willow trees, their branches sweeping the ground like green curtains. The moonlight slipped through the leaves in silvery ripples. Crickets sang here not loudly, just gently, like a hum through the roots. Bruno stepped into the circle. The grass here was soft and springy, and the air smelled of sleep. He circled once, twice, 3 times. Then he lay down. It was cool, but not cold. It was quiet, but not silent. It was soft, but not sinking. He closed his eyes. Ah, he sighed, and then he heard a tiny thump. A second rabbit, then a third. Little ones, cousins, friends. They had followed Bruno's trail, and now they too were curling up beside him in the willow circle. No one spoke, no one needed to. The wind whispered over the leaves. The crickets hummed, the moon watched kindly from above, and all the rabbits, one by one, drifted into sleep. Dot, dot. Bruno woke just before dawn. The air was cool, and the sky was painted with early light faint pinks, soft oranges. Around him the other rabbits still slept. He smiled and stretched, not ready to move, but happy. Still, the ground beneath him was a little damp from dew, and the idea of finding an even better nap spot tickled his thoughts like a feather. So off he went, quietly so as not to wake the others. He hopped through the hush of morning, past tufts of clover and the quiet murmurs of waking beetles. The world was slower now, in no rush to begin. He paused beneath the leaning birch tree. Its bark was peeling like soft paper. The patch of dirt beneath it was warm from the night. Bruno settled in. A wood thrush began to sing above, not loud but steady. A lovely lullaby, except it was still morning, and morning was not for sleeping deeply. Maybe later, Bruno whispered and stretched his back paws before hopping on. He passed a family of hedgehogs curled in a ring, their little snouts tucked into their paws. It looked comfy, but Bruno knew he wasn't prickly enough to sleep well in a bristly cuddle pile. Soon he reached the dandelion dell. It was a sunny, sheltered hollow with hundreds of golden heads bobbing softly. He nestled in their fluff, closing his eyes, and for a moment he almost fell asleep again. But then a breeze blew, and the dandelion seeds floated into his nose. Bruno twitched. He wrinkled. He sneezed. Once, twice. He giggled. Well, that won't do. He kept hopping, winding between low shrubs and curling vines. At the edge of the marsh, he found reeds that rustled like whispers and frogs that croaked slow, sleepy songs. The air was damp and smelled of earth and green things. It was almost perfect, but a curious dragonfly buzzed nearby, circling and hovering, its wings flickering in the light. He smiled, turned, and found a hollow of woven roots beside the cattails. He sniffed, sat, curled, then opened one eye. He said softly. Because it was close. So very close, and maybe the perfect place to nap wasn't just about softness or warmth. Maybe it was about the journey, about listening to the frogs, smiling at beetles, tiptoeing past hedgehogs, sneezing in dandelions. Bruno yawned and thought maybe the coziest place is the one where your heart feels full. And with that thought, he closed both eyes. The ship to tomorrow, somewhere beyond the edge of the known sea, where the waves whisper rather than crash, and the stars seem to dip closer with every mile. There sails a ship called the Quiet Star. She has no destination listed on any map, no crew shouting orders, no hurry in her sails. Her wood creaks gently with the rhythm of sleep, and her lanterns glow like lullabies drifting through mist. The The captain is an old cat named Marlowe. He wears a faded navy coat with brass buttons and a tiny compass on a chain around his neck, but he rarely uses it. The ship knows where it's going, even if no one else does. Marlowe's first mate is a turtle named Piper, who moves slowly, not out of age, but out of intent. He polishes the deck with his shell, hums low tunes to the breeze, and speaks only when the sea forgets its voice and needs reminding. They sail not through time, but through feeling, through memory, through quiet. Their path is not drawn by stars or currents, but by something deeper, unspoken pull toward something soft and good. Each evening, as the sun lowers itself like a sleepy eye, the ship sails farther into stillness. The waves part gently. The sails barely whisper. The breeze carries the scent of lavender, salt, and something sweet no one can name. Marlowe sits at the bow, paws crossed, eyes half closed. He doesn't steer, he listens. The ship sighs beneath him, warm and content. Below deck there are hammocks made of cloud cloth. Passengers come and go. A fox who once dreamed of stars. A mouse with a music box full of lullabies. A pair of owlets who always sleep upside down. No one knows how they board. They simply appear when the moment is right. No one talks much. They read, they hum, they sleep. Some write letters and fold them into the sea breeze. Some nights a soft rain falls, not cold, not wet, just the feeling of rain, and the ship rocks slower like a cradle in a lullaby. The moon often travels with them, drifting low and kind, casting silver light across the deck. The ocean glows faintly, like it's dreaming too, and always there is the soft sound of moving forward, toward where no one knows, but everyone feels it. A place that is not a place, a time that is not on clocks, a morning that hasn't happened yet, but waits patiently. The ship to tomorrow sails on, and all aboard rest easy, knowing the journey is the destination. Sometimes the sea sends gifts. Tiny drift bottles bob alongside the ship, each one carrying a wish written in a dreamer's sleep. Piper gathers them at dawn, lines them up on the railing, and lets the breeze read them aloud. Wishes like, "Let me wake with a light heart. Let her find her smile again. Let this night be long and kind." The wind tucks each one gently back into the air, carrying it where it needs to go. Marlowe once found a message that simply said, "I miss the stars." That night the sky was so clear it looked like someone had swept the clouds aside with a loving hand. In the evenings, fireflies sometimes dance across the sails, slow and golden. The passengers watch, blinking lazily, eyes half closed. The glow makes the canvas shimmer like a curtain made of candlelight. A lantern sways with the motion of the ship back and forth, casting long, soft shadows that seem to yawn across the deck. One night, a song drifted over the Waterloo, wordless and ancient. No one knew where it came from. Marlowe didn't search. Piper didn't ask. They simply listened. The ship slowed its breath. Even the ocean leaned in. It lasted only minutes, or hours, no one could tell. But after, the dreams were deeper. The passengers spoke of floating through silver mist, of flying without wings, of being held gently by hands made of starlight. The quiet star kept sailing, through morning fog that felt like memory, through waters so calm they reflected dreams, through nights when the stars blinked slower as if they too were getting sleepy. Each mile forward carried no urgency, only welcome, only softness. The ship to tomorrow knows the way, even if you don't, even if you're only just now closing your eyes. It will carry you slowly, softly, and when you're ready, you'll arrive, but not a moment before. Dream Vale. In the quietest corner of the sky, where stars blink slower and clouds drift like whispered thoughts, there is a place called the Dream Vale. It cannot be found on maps or in memory, only in moments just before sleep. A silver path winds through the clouds, soft as breath, leading toward a glowing arch where dreams begin to bloom. Tonight, a dreamer named Soul steps into that path with bare feet and closed eyes. Soul isn't walking, exactly. The path moves beneath him like a slow river, carrying him past floating lanterns that pulse with gentle light. Each one holds a dream left behind by someone else, fragments of songs, laughter in languages unknown, colors that have no names. He passes them slowly, watching them swirl like petals in the breeze. A hush settles over everything, as if the world is holding its breath. The sky above is deep indigo, and stars hum not songs, but feelings, warmth, kindness, calm. Soul reaches out to touch one, and it trembles like a bell. A memory rises not his owner boat, rocking gently on a lake, a hand brushing hair from a sleeping face. It passes. Another star hums, another memory. Dreams are not always things we dream, but things we need. Soul nods. He understands without knowing how. The path bends toward a garden that floats on the air. There are trees shaped like spirals, leaves shaped like feathers. Petals open when you breathe near them, releasing a soft chime. Soul walks through slowly, feeling the earth beneath his feet change with each step from moss to warm sand to velvet grass. Creatures sleep curled beneath branches, tiny lions, dreaming birds, cloud-coiled foxes. Nothing stirs. A breeze moves through the garden like a lullaby without words. Soul finds a small bench beneath a tree made of woven silver. He sits. The bench adjusts, softening to his shape. From the tree, long strands of light drift down like rain slowed to stillness. He closes his eyes and feels not sleep, but sinking a soft surrender of thought. The sky above darkens a shade, not with fear, but comfort. A deeper dream calls. He rises and follows the garden's end into a quiet forest. The trees glow faintly, as if lit from within by memory. Between trunks, paths appear and vanish. Soul takes none of them. He simply walks, letting the forest guide him. Along the way, voices rise not speaking, but sighing. They are not meant to be heard, only felt. One says, "You are safe," another, "You are home," a third, "Let go." He passes under an arch of roots, and the world changes. The forest fades behind, replaced by a calm sea lit from below. Soul walks on the water knot atop it, but within it, each step sends ripples outward, and fish made of shimmer circle his legs. The water hums in a deep, contented tone. Far ahead, the sea and sky blur. He moves toward that stillness, feeling his thoughts soften, scatter, and sleep. As Soul moves, the sea lifts him gently. He begins to float. The sky wraps around him, and a soft current carries him through the air. Shapes drift by towers made of glass bubbles, birds with candlelight eyes, turtles gliding on wind. None of them speak. None of them need to. In the dream veil, silence is full of kindness. Every moment the air feels softer. Every breath carries a promise. You are enough. Eventually, Soul reaches a wide, glowing field where moonflowers bloom endlessly. Their petals glow with a pale blue light and open only in the presence of quiet hearts. He steps gently between them. The ground hums, the sky stretches wider. Overhead, a moon rises slowly, and with it a great moth unfurls its wings and begins to circle. It casts no shadow, only calm. It brushes past his cheek like a blessing. The moth lands nearby and waits. Soul understands. He climbs onto its back and lies down. Its fur is softer than anything he's ever known. The moth lifts into the air, higher and higher, carrying him toward the stars. The higher they go, the slower everything becomes. A hush falls, vast and weightless. Soul lets go of his name, lets go of his thoughts, lets go of the day. There is nothing left to carry, only peace. The stars come closer now, not sharp points, but soft orbs, pulsing like sleeping hearts. The moth drifts among them with care, wings barely moving. Soul feels them hum against his skin. Each star is a lullaby. One sings of warm fires, another the scent of lavender on cool sheets, another still the sound of rain on a roof in the deep night. Soul doesn't think, he simply feels, gently floating between memory and dream. The stars begin to form a pattern, a door, not solid, but woven from light and stillness. The moth lands beside it and waits. Soul slides off its back, barefoot again, and approaches. The door opens not with sound, but with understanding. Inside is a room made of sky, a bed made of moonlight, and walls that breathe in rhythm with the ocean. It is his, not built for him, but waiting all along, just for now. He steps inside, and the door closes without closing. The air here smells like sleep, like the inside of a hug, like the last blink before dreams take over. He lies down, and the bed becomes his shape, his weight, his warmth. Pillows shaped like thoughts he hasn't had yet curl around him. A blanket of hush pulls over his chest. The room fades slowly, until there is only the rise and fall of his breath. Outside the room, the dream veil keeps moving. Stars drift, gardens grow, the moth flies on to another sleeper. But here, in this room, in this soft, endless moment, soul begins to dream, of nothing and everything, of water and light, of being a breeze on a summer afternoon, of being held, of not needing to go anywhere, of already being where he belongs. No questions, no clocks, just breath, just being. The dream deepens. He drifts through a field of clouds that sing when touched. He swims in a sea of blankets, pulled deeper by kindness itself. He hears no voice, but feels words spoken directly into his heart. You may rest, all is well. Time slides past like petals on a river. He cannot remember worry. He cannot remember why he ever needed to hold on. He only remembers this feeling, ease. Somewhere, a wind chime sings a tone so clear it feels like truth. Soul turns toward it in his dream. He sees nothing, only color, soft blues, endless cream, pale gold. The chime sounds again. He follows it, or perhaps it follows him. It doesn't matter. Nothing pulls, nothing pushes, only welcome, only softness. He floats. A smile curls on his lips. He doesn't know why. He doesn't need to. Far above, The stars close their eyes. Even the sky sleeps now. Soul dreams of sailing, not a boat, but a feeling. He is motion itself, rocking slow on a tide made of breath. He dreams of feathers drifting in slow spirals, of lanterns lit in his name. He dreams of holding hands with someone he hasn't met but already trusts. He dreams of being smaller than thought and larger than fear. The deeper the dream, the softer the world becomes. The stars now pulse once every few moments like distant sighs. The moon sets without falling. The sea sleeps with one eye open. And soul ... soul begins to dissolve, not vanish, just melt into quiet, into rhythm, into rest. He has never felt so real. He has never felt so gone. He becomes part of the dream veil, and the dream veil cradles him like a song. He no longer knows where the dream ends or begins. There is no difference. The room he entered fades into stars. The moth becomes wind. The bed becomes sky. Everything he was still is just scattered gently across this quiet forever. He has become sleep itself, not empty, not lost, just still, just safe, just peace in all directions. No need to wake, no need to go. This is the destination and the journey too. And so the dream veil continues. Tonight soul rests here. Tomorrow someone else will step onto the silver path with bare feet and closed eyes. The dream veil is always there, just beyond the edge of waking. Always waiting, always soft, always kind. If you listen just as you're falling asleep, you might hear it whisper, "Come in, let go. Everything is okay now." And you'll know without knowing you've arrived. The forest where dreams are grown, in a place no map can find. Beyond the edge of thought, there is a forest where dreams are grown. It is not entered by walking, but by resting. Not found with eyes, but with trust. The trees here are tall and slow. Their leaves shimmer like memory, and their roots hum with lullabies. One evening, as sleep approached, a dreamer named Alia stepped softly through the first veil of mist and into the forest of dreams. Alia didn't wonder how he arrived. In the forest, questions fall away like old coats. He walked quietly, the ground beneath him soft as wool, his heartbeat matching the rhythm of the breeze. All around him, dream fruit hung from branches pale blue, glowing faintly, shaped like closed eyes. They ripened only for those who needed them. Alia paused beneath one and waited. It fell gently into his hands. He cradled the fruit, feeling its hum. When he brought it close, it melted into mist and wrapped around him like a warm thought. With it came a vision, a quiet room, a bed by a window, rain on glass, a song his mother used to hum. It lasted only seconds. It stayed forever. The forest pulsed gently, welcoming him deeper. He walked on. A trail of sleeping petals fell from the trees to mark his way. As he walked, the air changed. Softer, slower, he came to a clearing where the trees bowed inward, creating a circle of hush. In the center stood a creature not beast, not person, but presence. It wore a cloak of dusk and eyes like falling stars. "You've come to remember," it said, though its mouth did not move. Alia nodded. He didn't know what he had forgotten, only that it would return here. The creature led him to a pool of water, so still it reflected dreams before they happened. Alia looked in and saw himself not now, but young, rocking gently in a cradle of moonlight. A voice whispered from the water, "You've always belonged. Tears slipped down his cheek without sadness. The trees leaned closer. A breeze passed through the leaves, and it sounded like 1,000 soft sighs. He was guided deeper into the forest, past flowers that glowed in answer to his breath, past stones that whispered stories beneath moss. A fox with eyes closed walked beside him. A heron made of mist flew overhead. Everything here moved slowly, as if time were being carefully carried, not spent. Elias' feet didn't tire. His thoughts didn't wander. He was simply present, as if he always had been. They came to a hill made of silence. At the top was a bench made of memory. Elias sat. The stars above blinked slower than normal, like they were thinking before each glow. He breathed in deeply. The air filled him with a softness so complete he almost disappeared into it, and for a moment he did. Just his breath remained, and the forest held him like a parent holds a sleeping child. A single petal floated down from nowhere and landed in his hand. When he opened his palm, it became a key. Nearby, a door shimmered into being, a frame made of willow branches and moonlight. Elias stood. He stepped through without looking back. Beyond the door was a library, floating in space. Each book glowed faintly and turned pages on their own, whispering as they read themselves to the stars. Elia wandered between shelves that curved like galaxies. Some books smelled of firelight, others of snow. Some hummed lullabies. He touched one, and it opened to a memory not his, but familiar. A long hug, a fire crackling, laughter that echoed like bells. Another book showed him himself sleeping, watched over by stars. Every story was a part of a dream, and every dream knew his name. He found a bed at the center of the library. It was made of cloudroot and covered in a quilt of dreams stitched by generations of quiet minds. He lay down. The books around him slowed their whispers. The stars dimmed gently. The air grew still. A voice without form said, "You may rest here for as long as you need." And he did. The stories continued without him, cradling his thoughts in light. Time passed gently, like a slow breeze through tall grass. When Elia woke, though not fully, he found himself floating again, carried by threads of light out of the library and back into the forest. He was not heavier or lighter, just more at peace. The trees welcomed him again, swaying as if they knew he had remembered something important, even if he couldn't name it. The air shimmered with quiet joy. He passed through a grove where lanterns hung from invisible branches. Each lantern flickered softly, holding someone else's dream. A child learning to fly, a grandmother baking stars into cookies, a whale that sang cities into existence. Elia paused beneath one shaped like a bell. It chimed once, and he felt warmth spread across his chest like a memory returning home. He smiled without reason. Near a stream that flowed without sound, he met a deer made of moonlight. It stepped softly beside him, guiding him with eyes that reflected constellations. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Elia followed the deer through mist that smelled of clean sheets and bedtime stories. At one point, he turned back and saw his footprints glowing faintly behind him, slowly fading into the dream soil. The deer led him to a spiral staircase made of wind. As he climbed, stars twirled past him like fireflies. At the top was a garden with no horizon, just color and scent and softness. Beds bloomed like flowers. Trees whispered lullabies. Elia found a hammock that appeared just for him. He curled into it, and the fabric wrapped around him like a promise. He closed his eyes and breathed deeper than ever before. In this place, sleep was not an escape. It was a return, a remembering, a becoming. Alaya dreamed again not in pictures, but in feelings, floating, glowing, being held. Each breath took him deeper. The forest, the books, the deer, the petals all became one soft rhythm. He no longer knew if he was awake or dreaming, only that both were safe. The hammock swayed, and the sky blinked slower with every swing. The stars above sang again, this time lower, softer. A melody built from kindness and time. The trees answered in slow rustles. Even the moon leaned closer, bathing the garden in a light that felt like forgiveness. Alaya wasn't going anywhere. He was already home. His thoughts no longer chased each other. They curled up side by side like sleepy cats in a warm room. He didn't think, he simply rested. Somewhere beyond him, the world continued its noise, its clocks, its worries, but none of it reached here. Here, in the forest beyond thought, he was untouched, whole. A small breeze kissed his cheek and whispered, "Stay." He did. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, or maybe none at all. Time wasn't needed, just peace, just stillness, and the steady beat of a heart that knew, finally, how to slow down. In the softest corner of his dream, he saw a door again, to leave, but to return if ever needed. It pulsed gently, a reminder the forest was always there, grown from sleep, fed by dreams, reached by rest. Alaya would carry the forest now, in his chest, in his breath, in the quiet part of his thoughts. He didn't need to remember how to get here, only how it felt. The feeling would always guide him. He rose once more, slowly, weightless, with peace. The trees parted to make way. The forest exhaled, as if in farewell, though he would never truly leave. The stars bowed. The deer vanished into moonlight. Elias stepped through the last veil, back into his sleeping body, back into his bed. But the calm remained, wrapped around him like a second skin. He smiled in his sleep, and the forest smiled too. So if one night, as you close your eyes, you feel a soft breeze that smells like memory, and you hear a distant chime, follow it. Let your breath slow, let your thoughts rest. You might find yourself in that forest, walking beside Alaya, beneath dream-grown leaves. The forest where dreams are grown never locks its gates. It is always waiting, and you are always welcome, even now, even here. Sleep well. The teacup cottage, tucked at the edge of a hill that always smells like cinnamon and clover, sits a little stone house called Teacup Cottage. No one built it. It simply arrived one morning, nestled between blackberry brambles and a quiet bend in the path. It has a chimney that sighs in the wind, windows that blink in the rain, and a front door that creaks like an old lullaby. Inside lives a woman named Nella, who never rushes. Nella wears cardigans that smell like books and always has crumbs in her pockets. She keeps company with a cat named Pudding and a kettle named Whistle. The kettle talks, but only in steam and squeaks. Pudding understands. Each day, Nella tends to very little. She sweeps the porch, trims the hedges with half-hearted snips, and reads to the fireplace, who glows brighter when the plot thickens. Evenings are her favorite. That's when the cottage hums. Candles flicker like they're whispering secrets. The walls stretch ever so slightly to feel more snug. Nella brews tea lavender, or chamomile, or something with a made-up Nemand pours it into cups that never chip. No matter how many times they're clinked, the whole house smells like warm bread and honeyed dreams. It always feels like nap o'clock. Tonight, the wind is low and round-bellied, the kind that wraps around the house like a storybook hug. Nella pads around in slippers shaped like sheep, her steps making no sound at all. Outside, the moon hangs like a pear, glowing golden above the chimney. Pudding is curled in a pie dish on the hearth. Whistle murmurs to itself on the stove, and Nella, she's writing a letter she never send. That's enough. She writes with a feather pen, dipped in ink the color of twilight. Her words are slow, half-spelled thoughts about the way moss looks like tiny forests, or how soup always tastes better when stirred clockwise. The letter isn't meant for anyone. It's just the kind of writing that keeps the mind warm and sleepy. When she finishes, she folds the page into a paper crane and places it on the windowsill. A breeze picks it up and carries it into the night, where it joins dozens of other paper animals, mice, moons, mushrooms, and moths drifting between stars, like gentle thoughts someone forgot but didn't lose. Nella smiles. She pours another cup. Outside, an owl sings a single note. The fire pops politely. Everything is content. And that's the secret of Teacup Cottage. It isn't where you go, it's where you return. Nella finishes her tea and pulls a blanket from the arm of her chair. It's made of old sweaters sewn together by candlelight and smells faintly of cinnamon and naps. She wraps it around her shoulders and sinks into the armchair like a marshmallow melting into cocoa. Her breath slows, her thoughts quiet. The room seems to dim itself gently, as if tucking her in. Pudding purrs like a distant thundercloud. On the far wall hangs a clock with no hands. It doesn't tick. It hums softly, like it's always telling you there's still time. The fire settles low. Shadows sway like drowsy dancers. Nella watches the flicker of flames and lets her mind wander not far, just down old paths of memory. The day she found a blue egg in her shoe, the time it rained indoors, the year she taught the curtains to twirl. Outside, the garden dreams, the pumpkins breathe slow and deep. The rosemary hums, even the fence posts lean toward each other, whispering fence post secrets. Nella's eyes flutter closed, open, then closed again, not asleep, not awake, just there, held in the soft in-between where everything important happens. Her teacup steams gently beside her, untouched but not unloved. Somewhere in the house, a drawer opens itself and sighs. A floorboard creaks, not because of weight, but because it remembers something funny. The house has a mind of its own, not loud, not busy, just gentle, just kind. It remembers what you forget. It keeps track of the dreams you leave behind in corners. It hums to the broom when it's lonely. It folds your socks even when you're too tired to care. On the highest shelf, a book opens by itself. The pages rustle, flipping to a poem written in the language of snails. It speaks of soft trails, of waiting, of traveling without rush. Nella once tried to read it aloud, but the words made her yawn mid-sentence. She liked that. She let the poem read itself in the background. Some stories are meant to be overheard by the soul, not studied by the eyes. Nella's breathing slows further. Her hands rest gently on her lap. She's not thinking anymore, not remembering, not planning, just being. Her heartbeat syncs with the Tickles' clock. Her breath matches the flicker of candlelight. Time folds in on itself, like a letter pressed into a pocket. Outside, the moon watches through the window, calm and full, proud of the quiet below. A gentle knock comes at the door, not sharp, just curious. The door opens slowly. A visitor steps in a dream in the shape of a bear made of bedtime and velvet fur. It doesn't speak, it simply nods, removes its shoes, and curls up in the second armchair, which has waited all year for company. Nella doesn't stir, but her mouth turns up at the corners, just a little. Even in sleep, she's hospitable. The bear dream sighs and the air gets warmer. The fire pops once in approval. A few stray embers dance quietly, then settle. On the mantel, the portrait of a goose in spectacles tips slightly forward, then back. Pudding stretches, flips over in the pie dish, and resumes purring. The dream bear drifts off, snoring the sound of snowfall. The house, pleased, sighs with them, happy everyone's tucked in. The night deepens. Outside, nothing stirs. The trees sway in slow motion. Stars blink only every few seconds. Clouds nestle together like kittens. Teacup Cottage becomes smaller and smaller in the world, just a warm dot in a great field of sleep. Inside, a girl, a cat, a kettle, and a bear all dream in different rhythms. But the rhythms match. Peace echoes gently between the walls and beyond. In her sleep, Nella dreams of walking through a field where flowers bloom when you think of kindness. She sees her old dog, now a cloud, wagging its tail and asking for ear scritches. She picks dandelions and tucks them behind her ears. Every breath smells like jam and dusk. The path ahead is soft. She knows she won't remember this dream, but also knows it will remember her. Elsewhere, another teacup fills itself. In another cottage, someone else settles into an armchair with a quilt made of memories. The warmth travels dream to dream, house to house, wrapping sleepy hearts in invisible hugs. The world is vast, but tonight the cozy places are linked. By steam, by quiet, by stillness, and by the story Nella is living, one breath at a time. Eventually, the night reaches its deepest blue. The house stops humming, not because it's tired, but because silence is the final ingredient. Pudding doesn't move. Whistle cools down with a whisper. The dream bear sighs one last time and melts into the cushion. Nella's blanket rises and falls like a lullaby. The house stands guard, proud and gentle, watching over its sleepers with old, glowing eyes. Morning will come, but not yet. For now, the stars cradle the roof. The moon rests on the windowsill, and the shadows curl at the base of the armchairs like old cats. Nothing hurries here, nothing interrupts. Just the soft breath of sleep, just the quiet truth that all is well, all is still, all is held. The kind of peace that doesn't ask questions, the kind of night that stays with you. And so Teacup Cottage remains, as it always has, a place for slow evenings and long silences, a place where the kettle hums and the fire listens, where blankets remember your shape and dreams arrive in paper cranes. You don't have to look for it. You only have to close your eyes and let the world grow quiet. When you do, you'll find it waiting, the kettle's already on. Sleep well, traveller, you're home. The cloud that wanted to nap, in a sky where time moved like syrup and stars blinked slowly. There drifted a small cloud named Lilo. She was softer than fluff, round as a biscuit, and all she wanted was a place to nap. But naps in the sky were tricky to many breezes, to many sunbeams, and always the moon trying to chat. So one quiet evening, Lilo set off to find the perfect resting spot. First, she tried resting beside a sleepy mountain peak. It was peaceful, with echoing owl hoots and cool mist. But the wind kept rustling her edges, and the mountain snored too loud. Not quite, Lilo whispered and drifted on, yawning as the stars blinked in understanding. The world turned a little slower as she floated gently above lakes that shimmered like sleepy eyes. Next, she nestled above a sleepy village where chimneys puffed soft ribbons of smoke. The smell of bread and dreams filled the air, but the church bell tolled once, and Lilo flinched. Too noisy, she sighed. So she curled herself into a spiral and glided away. Below, dogs twitched in dreams, and windows glowed with bedtime stories. Lilo drifted silently, looking for hush. She floated into a grove of moonflowers, blooming just for night. Their petals opened with a sigh and glowed like pale lanterns. Lilo settled above them, letting their scent lull her. But crickets began to sing, slow and sweet, and even though it was lovely, it stirred her thoughts instead of settling them. Almost, she thought, but not quite, and she drifted on. The sky darkened deeper as clouds curled around dreams. Lilo wandered toward the sea, where waves whispered ancient songs and boats rocked like lullabies. She hovered above a quiet cove, watched the tide breathe in and out. It was nearly perfect cool, hushed, kind, but seagulls giggled in their sleep, and Lilo couldn't help but giggle too. Sleep slipped further away. She turned inland again, over forests and fields. Below, fireflies blinked like tiny goodnights. She passed over a barn where a child dreamed of flying. Their dream rose into the air and brushed against Lilo like a warm thought. It made her heart slow down. She smiled, slowed her drifting, and let herself sink just a little lower, closer to the quiet earth. Finally, Lilo found it a hollow above a hill cradled between two taller clouds. There was no wind, no birds, no bells, just soft, dark, cool air and the hum of nothing at all. She exhaled, curled her edges inward, let her fluff loosen and settle. The stars above blinked slower. The moon dimmed her glow. Everything around her paused, as if holding its breath. She thought of nothing now. Not the mountain, not the village, not the sea. Just this stillness, just this softness. Her thoughts, like feathers, drifted off. She grew heavier, but in a gentle way, like rain waiting to fall. And then she didn't think at all. She simply floated, simply was. Her breath matched the rhythm of the world below, quiet and slower still. Dreams found her at last simple, small ones of warm places, kind voices, long sleeps with no clocks. Lilo smiled in her sleep, a small shape in a vast sky, finally at peace. The stars watched over her. The wind tiptoed around, the night deepened, held her close. She had found it, the nap she had waited for, the quiet place, the hush inside the hush. And now, when the sky is still and the stars barely blink, you might look up and see her one soft cloud resting above the world. She doesn't move, doesn't stir, just floats there, wrapped in sleep. And if you're very quiet, very still, you might feel the hush she found settle gently over you too, like a yawn, like a sigh. like sleep arriving softly. The pillow path, there's a trail made entirely of pillows hidden behind a yawn, only visible when your eyes start to flutter. It appears in the quiet space between thoughts. Tonight, a small traveler named Pippa Mouse in striped pajamas finds the first cushion and steps onto it. Each pillow sinks softly beneath her paws, sighing with contentment. The sky above her darkens like cooling tea. Pip walks slowly. There's no hurry here. Along the path are lanterns shaped like stars, flickering with sleepy golden light. She passes a tea kettle that hums as she walks by, and a sleepy cricket that waves once before nodding off. Every step makes her paws feel warmer, heavier. The pillows ahead curve gently, leading into a tunnel of blankets that smell like warm bread. Inside the tunnel, the world is quieter still. Pip curls her tail close and hums a lullaby only she knows. The walls breathe in and out. A soft wind rustles through layers of fluff. When she emerges, she's on a hill made of quilts, beneath a sky full of blinking dreams. She lies down, the stars above her blink once, twice, and pause. The wind wraps her like a story. She hears voices, now not loud ones, but far away and kind. Dreams passing by, whispering things like, "Rest here, and you've done enough." Pip's breath slows. She wiggles once to get extra cozy, then doesn't move again. Around her, other tiny sleepers appear: rabbits, hedgehogs, even a yawning owleech, finding their spot on the soft hill. No one speaks. There's no need. The sky tucks them in. The breeze hushes the last thoughts. The pillows beneath them grow still, holding every dream like a secret. Pip's eyes close. Her tail twitches once, and she sleeps. If you ever feel tired enough, quiet enough, you might find that path too. Just follow the pillows. Don't rush, don't worry. It's there waiting, and so very soft,